Take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray.
I'm Jonna Johnson. Grab your virtual donuts and coffee as we sprint through some quantum chip news from Cisco, network monitoring enhancements from Juniper, a new Linux AI mainframe from IBM, and more. But first, Drew, you have a couple of announcements.
Yep, we're sponsored today by Megaport. What if deploying a global network took less time than brewing your morning coffee? With Megaport, it does. Megaport's software-defined network lets you spin up a private, high-speed cloud connectivity in under 60 seconds without the bottlenecks of traditional provisioning. Connect instantly to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and over 900 data centers. Whether you're connecting co-located or cloud-based infrastructure, Megaport delivers secure, low-latency connections on demand up to 100 gigabits per second. You can start now at megaport.com/packetpushers. And for a limited time, listeners can try a free Megaport port or Megaport cloud router for 30 days. That's megaport.com/packetpushers. And stay tuned after the news. We have a Tech Bytes conversation about Sharkfest. That's the annual Wireshark Users Conference taking place this June in Richmond, Virginia. Gerald Combs of the Wireshark Foundation joins us to talk about the workshops and talks. Keynote speaker Vint Cerf, plus other fun and educational activities. Yeah, good one. You can find out more at sharkfest.wireshark.org. Before we get to the news, just a quick FU from a listener who reached out to ask, what is the best way to listen to your podcast to help you the most? Well, thank you for the question. The answer is, whatever platform is most convenient for you. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever your favorite podcatcher app is, or even on packetpushers.net, you can listen to it there. However you listen, it does get added to our tally. So if you are looking to do maybe a little bit more, we would love it if you recommended us to colleagues or friends in IT. And if you ever happen to check out a product or service that you heard about on one of the Packet Pusher podcasts, it really does make a difference if you mention that to the vendor. So appreciate the question, and hopefully that helps. And always, if you've got a comment, kudos, or even a querulous query, you can let us know at packetpushers.net/fu. And Jonna, on to the Red Alert.
There we go. Thanks, Drew. In the past week, a total of 1,257 new CVEs were published and 3,510 existing CVEs were updated. Of those, 385 were critical, 6 scored 10 out of 10. Couple to bring to everyone's attention, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency added 2 SonicWall vulnerabilities to its catalog of known active exploits. The vulnerabilities affect multiple SonicWall firewall models, including SMA 200, 210, 400, 410, and 500V. Links are in the show notes. And Drew, I think we had another one from Cisco.
Yeah, I just wanted folks to be aware of this because it won't be breaking news by the time this publishes, but Cisco has rolled out a patch for a critical vulnerability that's affecting iOS XE software for wireless controllers. It could allow an unauthenticated remote attacker to upload arbitrary files and execute commands with root privileges. So this is a serious one.
Yeah, and this vulnerability is in its out-of-band access point image download feature in, as you said, Drew, iOS XE software for wireless LAN controllers. The vulnerability actually results from a hard-coded JSON web token on an affected system. So the attacker could exploit this vulnerability by sending crafted HTTPS requests to the AP image download interface, and a patch is available, as we noted, so please apply it. You can see the links in the show notes again.
Yeah. All right, moving on to news. First, Juniper Networks has announced new capabilities to its Mist AI platform. First is Marvis Minis. These are essentially little software monitoring programs that run on Juniper gear. They can now simulate a user to measure the WAN performance between the site where the Mini is located and a cloud application. You can test things like reachability and gather loss latency and jitter metrics. And Johnny, you had some more details about this.
Yeah, Juniper calls these Marvis Minis digital twins, which they sort of are. They're sort of twins of users, I guess, which proactively monitor and simulate the end-to-end network experiences across both public and private cloud environments. The upgraded Minis now offer improved WAN and application visibility, so Juniper says they enable faster issue detection and resolution without additional hardware. A new dashboard and client software further enhance the automation, according to Juniper, and enhance troubleshooting and device-level Wi-Fi visibility, streamlining the network operations for IT teams.
Yeah, so that new Mini announcement, you get that feature without an additional licensing cost if you're already on the Marvis platform. The second big announcement out of Juniper is a Marvis client for Windows, Mac OS, and Android. Can measure performance from the client to a wireless AP, a Juniper wireless AP, to help streamline Wi-Fi troubleshooting. The client can provide information including the device's OS version, radio chipset, and the firmware version of the radio driver. It can also measure signal strength between the client and AP. Juniper says the initial targets for this are sectors like healthcare and manufacturing, where wireless performance may be critical to outcomes. This client does require a separate license.
And I do like the focus on wireless because, in the old days, we used to talk a lot about the fights between the networks and the systems people because everybody always blamed the other one until you figured out how to troubleshoot effectively and isolate the problem in usually, and I will say as a network person, it's usually the database problem, but that's just my opinion.
Right. And sometimes
But
you do need that client perspective too, because obviously Juniper can measure performance at the AP level, but knowing things about firmware and signal strength right from the client,
exactly.
yeah, provides more
And
detail.
being able to highlight the issues on the wireless link is actually very important as they pointed out.
Yeah. Moving on, Cisco has unveiled a prototype quantum network entanglement chip. Cisco's positioning itself to be a provider to connect quantum processors to help scale up the capacity of quantum computers. Cisco says its network entanglement chip functions at room temperature, consumes less than a milliwatt of power. They say the chip can generate more than 1 million usable entangled photon pairs per second per channel for a total of 200 million pairs per second in the chip. I don't know how that translates to bandwidth or throughput, but maybe that's not what we're talking about here with quantum computing. Cisco also says it works with common telecom wavelengths, so it could integrate with existing fiber. This prototype was developed in partnership with the University of California, Santa Barbara. Johnny, you're our sort of quantum guru here. Any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think it's actually a great move from Cisco's perspective. They're thinking as they've kind of spelled it out, and I think on heavy strategy, the CIO Fletcher Previn actually alluded to the fact that Cisco's getting very interested in quantum. But for quantum computing, you need millions of reliable qubits to be able to get quantum advantage over traditional computing for specific quantum advantage problems. What Cisco is thinking about is that there will be a quantum data center where you use quantum networking to link together enough processors to reach the scale needed to do useful work. So in other words, they're kind of saying, okay, existing processors are on the hundreds to thousands of qubits. We need millions. One way to get there is by linking lots of the existing processors together, and to do that, you can use quantum networking. It's worth noting that quantum networking is also useful for a lot of other applications, and in fact, we have talked about quantum entanglement being used to distribute keys. We've talked about quantum entanglement being used in space. So this is a really savvy move by Cisco because they're saying it's almost. I mean, the best way to put it is it's if there's a gold rush in quantum, they're selling tools to the miners as opposed
Right.
to going after the gold, which is not to say that they might not go after the gold themselves, but it's a very smart move because lots of people are going to want to be doing quantum networking because it's got a whole subset of use cases, some of which one of which a key one is in data centers of quantum computing clusters, but also there are many others. So they're hedging their bets 6 way from Sunday with this development. It's also important to note that the timing is fantastic because with all the pressure on supply chains and tariffs in the US, there's going to be extra pressure for these chips to be controlled by US companies. I don't know the full supply chain where they're doing the manufacturing or anything else, but obviously Cisco's very well aware of that. And so the timing, again, is quite good.
Yeah, so a lot of links in the show notes. Cisco put out a couple of blogs. There's also an academic paper that we'll have a link to that talks about the architectural design they're taking with this. So I feel like my take is Cisco is obviously recognizing that being known as a network provider, this is a space they could conceivably play in well without having to compete in the broader, building the quantum qubit processors, which there's a lot of ways to do that. They're also very expensive, very hard to do. So this gives them an opportunity to provide value in the quantum space if it emerges as a significant market category. I also kind of wonder if they felt like they missed out a little bit on the AI gold rush, and they're sort of trying to get their ducks in a row if the quantum gold rush ever emerges.
Possibly, but I think I don't feel like they did because they have embedded a lot of AI into their products. They took a good hard look at what AI can and can't do and said, you know what, from our perspective, the Cisco view on AI is the best place to put it initially is in our products to make them more effective, which I think is absolutely correct.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking is the infrastructure build out, like as we'll talk
Yeah,
about with Arista's results coming up. People aren't necessarily buying Cisco switches.
that is an excellent point, and I will concede that one, Drew, absolutely. And I do think the fact that they've jumped on quantum networking also legitimizes the quantum networking space because one of the challenges I've had in the past is talking about quantum entanglement, talking about the use cases for quantum networking, talking about the fact that it's up and running, so it's not hypothetical. And then the Achilles heel is, yeah, who does it? And basically it boils down to a Lero quantum, which is great. They're ex-Cisco people. They're very good,
Hmm.
but one one company does not a market make. So now that
Right.
Cisco's in it, we have an official market. And there are other quantum networking players, but Aliro is really the one that's moved farthest, and has, the most up and running systems to talk about. So this is great.
It's interesting that they're ex-Cisco because we know how Cisco tends to operate too with folks who used to be at Cisco. They sometimes end up getting brought back in.
Exactly. Although who knows if that's going to happen here, but we shall see.
Yeah.
So moving on to some of our favorite topics. Basically, everything seems to be about either quantum or AI today, and this next news item is no difference. Cadence is debuting an NVIDIA-powered supercomputer to accelerate enterprise engineering and biotechnology. That's one of two major computing announcements that we've got in today's show. Cadence Design Systems has launched the Millennium M2000 supercomputer. Sounds kind of retro, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Powered by NVIDIA's Blackwell GPUs to, according to the company, dramatically accelerate AI-driven simulations in chip design, aerospace, and drug discovery. The company says it offers up to 80 times performance gains over CPU systems and 20 times lower power consumption. Yay. It also supports both on-prem and cloud deployment so that you can choose the form factor of that you desire, enabling what they say is scalable high-performance computing for 3D design and AI workloads. According to them, this is a huge step towards democratizing access to advanced simulation infrastructure, bridging enterprise needs across hybrid and multi-cloud environments. So there we have the M2000. I don't know, you would have thought they'd call it the M2050 or the M23000, but okay, we'll take it.
Right. It is a little bit reminiscent of the start of the decade. It sounds like a sports car, like an old sports car or something, the M2000. But
Yeah, I'm sort of having Back to the Future
right.
flashbacks.
I do think there probably is a market for enterprises wanting to be able to get their hands on pre-built systems like this, just to advance, any AI initiatives they've got going faster than having to DIY it or just rely on NVIDIA for everything and build it out.
Yeah, I agree, I'm sounding snarky, but I'm actually quite excited that we've got two major computing announcements, because it's not every week that we are able to point to new lines of computing coming out of major vendors. So all good.
Yeah.
We'll get to the next one just after the next couple of items.
Yeah, one more news story before the break. Gluware has announced the 5.5 version of its network automation software. There are new capabilities, including native integration with NetBox. NetBox is a popular data modeling tool for network automation. This allows for easier synchronization between device data residing in Glueware and NetBox's data model. The release also adds support for two versions of the Sonic Network OS, that's the community version, and Dell's enterprise distribution. There's also enhanced support for Cisco Meraki, Versa Director, and other products. So, looking at network automation, take a look at Glueware.
Yeah, I do like the Glueware plus NetBox is really two great tastes that taste great together.
And a quick word from our sponsor, Megaport. With Megaport, you can provision high-speed connections to data centers, service providers, AI providers, and internet exchanges all over the world with just a few clicks. Megaport provides access to more than 930 locations in 26 countries, allowing you to expand your network and grow your business quickly. Whether you're connecting co-located or cloud-based infrastructure, Megaport delivers secure, low-latency connections on demand up to 100 gigabits per second. You can get private, secure, low-latency connections across the Megaport fabric. And again, you've got a choice of bandwidth options up to 100 gig per second. You can start now at megaport.com/packetpushers. And for a limited time, listeners can try a free Megaport port or the Megaport cloud router free for 30 days. There's no contracts, no hidden fees, just a month of scalable, on-demand networking. Check it out at megaport.com/packetpushers.
All right. And continuing the theme of major computing announcements, IBM introduces a new generation of the Linux One AI mainframe. IBM's Linux One Emperor 5, okay, good points for naming there, is the latest generation of Linux-only mainframes built on the Z17 architecture and optimized for AI workloads, energy efficiency, and enterprise security. Gosh, this is sounding familiar. Powered by the Telum 2 processor and featuring the upcoming Spire AI accelerator, it delivers what IBM calls ultra-fast inferencing performance and supports confidential computing, which is actually very big among lots of our clients, post-quantum cryptography, yay IBM, since they were actually the source of a lot of the NIST algorithms there, and containerized workloads. It is designed to reduce total cost of ownership and enhance security. It also, very interestingly, integrates with Red Hat OpenShift and supports major AI frameworks like TensorFlow and PyTorch. I think this is interesting in and of itself. Obviously, if you're somebody that's looking to do some of those some of those applications. It's a great announcement, but I think it's even more interesting as a trend. I don't think we would have said this 2 years ago, but AI revitalizing the mainframe and massive computing
Right.
industry was not on my playbook for 2023, but here we are in 2025 and it's happening. So good to see.
So, one word that didn't show up in here was NVIDIA, which makes me think the Spire AI accelerator, is that an IBM GPU or from somebody else? Do you know?
I believe it's an IBM one. I don't know if they've sourced it from someone else, and the processor they're using is the Telum 2 processor
Mhm.
with the AI accelerator. But yes, this is an NVIDIA free announcement.
Okay.
And kind of unusual, an NVIDIA free announcement in the AI space.
Yeah, that's why it
Um,
jumped out at me because that hasn't been the case. But it's good to see the market advancing some competitors to NVIDIA's dominance here.
Exactly, exactly. So switching gears back to networking, leading European telcos are calling for exclusive access to the 6 GHz band. Just recently, a coalition of leading European telecom operators has issued an open letter urging European regulators to allocate the entire upper 6 GHz spectrum band for mobile use, arguing it is essential for sustaining 5G and enabling 6G deployment in Europe. They claim this allocation is critical to avoid a capacity crunch, support Europe's digital economy, and maintain global effectiveness. Signatories, interestingly, include most of the major European telcos, who warn that failing to act now could stifle economic growth, limit mobile's GDP contribution, and hinder Europe's leadership in next generation wireless technology. All quite possibly true, but one questions the impact of satellite services on this. It should be interesting to see how this rolls out. But it's good to see that the telcos are acting in unison even across major countries in Europe.
So, do you know what 6 GHz is being used for in Europe now that the mobile operators would be like, hey, we got it sounds like there may be use cases that they are worried about interfering with, which is why they're asking for it to be exclusively for their use case?
Um, that is actually a great question. I don't know what it's currently being used for. They are really just trying to map it out, I think, preemptively. And of course, in
Okay.
the US, they're also trying to get access to the same 6 GHz bandwidth, even though we just released a 480 megahertz in the lower 6 GHz bandwidth, eh, expressly reserved for this. So
Yeah, my
I
understanding
don't
in
know
the
what's
US
going.
was there were some legacy use cases for 6 GHz, which is why if you are rolling out 6 GHz Wi Fi, there are some like actual physical locations where that may not be an option.
Exactly, and that's why they had the earlier announcement that they allocated the lower bandwidth for it. So
Okay, so European telcos trying to muscle in.
exactly. They want it reserved. Well, I think the best outcome is that globally it ends up being reserved. But again, that depends on not knowing in detail what the use cases are right now. So if anyone's listening and happens to be using the 6 GHz block for something, please let us know what you're using it for and whether you think this is a good idea or not. From a naive perspective looking at this, it sounds to me like it's a great idea and the European governments should and regulators would do well to take heed. That said, just because all the telcos want it doesn't mean it's a great idea. And
Right.
again, not sure how that factors in the use of satellite for various things, so we'll see.
I mean, every industry with self-interest when they go to the government to talk about, relaxing regulation
Yeah.
says it could stifle economic growth. So you always have to take that
Meaning
argument with
our
a grain.
economic growth.
Well, there's that. Yeah. So that's definitely an argument that needs a little bit more digging into.
Okay.
All right, let's wrap with some financial results. We'll start with Arista. They announced results for Q1 2025. Revenues were 2 billion, up 27% versus last year, with net income of 813 million, also up 27%. This was the company's first $2 billion quarter in the company's history. Despite the result, Arista's share price dropped almost 8% after the earnings call. I think tariff uncertainty is part of that. In the earnings call, CEO Jayshree Ulal said Arista will try to absorb tariff-related costs as much as possible, but not knowing what they're going to be and where they'll be deployed makes it hard for them to predict. She also noted there is a chance prices could go up again, depending on how tariffs fall out. An analyst also asked if Arista was seeing customers make early purchases to stockpile gear against forthcoming tariffs. She said she didn't see that happening and isn't seeing gear pile up in customer inventories. Moving off, Fortinet also reported their Q1 2025 results. Revenues were $1.54 billion, up 14%. Net income was $433 million, up about 44% over last year. Revenue from services was $108 billion, and product revenue was $459 million. Looking ahead, Fortinet is expecting a slightly more robust Q2 with revenues of $1.5 to $1.6 billion. So a decent forecast kind of lining up with their current quarter.
And
Go
just a
ahead,
quick
Jenna.
question, Drew, just in your opinion, realizing that you are not a financial analyst and don't play one on a podcast, do you think they are sandbagging for Q2 when they say slightly more robust? Because it does seem that they've got a nice bit of momentum going.
I don't know if I would say sandbagging. I feel like, looking at all the earnings calls, we're going to talk about AMD next. Everybody's like, tariffs, we don't know what's going to happen. Tariff, uncertainty, uncertainty, uncertainty. So
Got it.
I
That
think
makes
everybody's just
sense.
being cautious, frankly. And obviously, I think they're right to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't disagree in the slightest. I also
Yeah.
just am continually aware of the fact that no matter how spectacular a quarter you have, if you projected guidance that it was going to be even a teeny bit more spectacular, your stock tanks, which is one of those things I understand intellectually but have never understood like meaningfully. So that's why I
Right.
was curious. Okay.
Right. It could be, given that, Fortinet's also obviously making the bulk of its revenue from services, that, the impact on hardware sales may, not have as much of a dent in their revenues as otherwise it might be. Last but not least, we're talking about AMD. They rolled out results for Q1. Revenues were $7.4 billion, up 36% over last year, with net income of $709 million, up 476% over this time last year. By business unit, data center led the way with $3.7 billion in revenue, up 57% over last year, and of course, driven by sales of GPUs and CPUs. Client and gaming brought in just under $3 billion in revenues, which was up 28%. The only downside was embedded systems, with under $1 billion in revenues and down 3%. Looking ahead, AMD expects Q2 to match revenues with Q1, give or take a few $100 million. And one challenge there is the recent export restriction on AMD's MI308X GPU. The company isn't allowed to sell it into China, so the company is accounting for that lost revenue opportunity in its Q2 forecast. Otherwise, things look to be going pretty well at AMD, especially when you compare them to Intel.
Yeah, well, yes, pretty much anyone looks pretty good there,
That's true.
and sad to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, why do you have any thoughts on why the embedded market is not doing quite as well?
They just kind of chalked it up to seasonality, which who knows what that covers, but they're expecting it to tick back up again, I think, in Q2.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm only sort of cerebrally interested because I started my career in embedded systems design, so it's
Mhm.
one wonders, is that somehow a bigger flag for the market, or did AMD take their eye off the ball, or something? And it sounds like it's sort of hand wavy something. We're not quite sure, but we expect it to get better.
Yeah, they didn't really dig into it too much, as far as I could tell in their earnings call, and the analysts weren't really concerned about it. Everybody is very much focused on AI growth and tariffs. So,
Makes sense.
and for
Makes
AMD in
sense.
particular, potential restrictions on exports, as we already know, it's hitting them for the GPUs, and so that's the big concern there. That wraps up the news portion of the show. Jonna, where can folks get more from you?
You can always hit me up at our website, nemertes.com, nemertes.com, and I am on LinkedIn, where my latest post on enumeracy appears to have gotten well over 5,000 views. I'm not sure quite why, but I guess enumeracy was a hot button for an awful lot of us.
Sorry, what is
So,
enumeracy?
people that say, "Oh, I can't, I can't multiply percentages or something like that. That's math. I don't do it."
Mhm.
And it's scary and surprising how many people do that. I used as an example in the US, one of the administration officials was very proud to talk about how they presented 275 million deaths by overdose in the United States
Oh, yes.
based on their most recent fentanyl busts. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, so pretty much all of us took one look at that and said, that's 75% of the United States. There's something wrong with how they computed that.
Yes.
And that is enumeracy in a nutshell. It's very clear what they did. They just took the sheer volume of fentanyl that they seized, figured out what an overdose was, divided the numbers, and came up with these. But all the other assumptions there were inaccurate. And that's generally what I wish people would pay more attention to. I have been hardcore about this ever since a major newspaper of record, the New York Times, misposted by two orders of magnitude the radiation released by Fukushima in Japan,
Uh,
and didn't realize that it was actually saying in the article that this was an incredibly toxic level of radiation and it was an incredibly severe leak. And they sort of downplayed it because they didn't actually understand what the numbers meant. And when I look at that, I just, it's not acceptable for me to stand up and say, I don't know what these words mean. I can't write. I can't read. I'm illiterate. Why is it acceptable for functioning professionals to say, oh, I don't really do numbers?
mhm. Okay, so
So
innumeracy, like illiteracy, I get it. Okay. A
exactly,
lack of fluency
exactly.
with,
So
yeah.
there's the rant for the morning.
Right. You can go check out her LinkedIn if you're curious. I'm Drew Conry Murray. I'm on Blue Sky at DrewCM, blogging at packetpushers.net. Please do stick around for our Tech Bites with the Wireshark Foundation talking about Sharkfest coming up this June in Richmond, Virginia. All the cool stuff that's going to be going on. That's coming right up. Today on the Tech Bites podcast, Sharkfest. No, it's not a week of shark-themed television. It's the annual conference where Wireshark users and trainers gather to learn, share, and improve their packet and protocol analysis skills. Gerald Combs of the Wireshark Foundation is here to tell us about Sharkfest and make the case for why this live event needs to be on your calendar. Gerald, welcome back to Packet Pushers. And just briefly, what is Sharkfest? Why should network engineers want to go?
Sharkfest is a conference dedicated to Wireshark and everything Wireshark, and everything around Wireshark, including protocol analysis and the tools that not only Wireshark itself is a tool, but the other tools and products that make up sort of that protocol analysis ecosystem.
What kinds of other tools then would I be getting exposed to at Sharkfest?
People often talk about stuff that they're developing themselves, other open source projects like TCP dump or Kismet, or
Mm.
there's always some new tool that somebody's developing that they're talking about. So that's a great way to learn about that sort of thing.
And where is it? When does it take place?
The next Sharkfest is going to be in Richmond, Virginia in June from the 14th through the 19th. Yeah.
All right, June 14th and 19th in Richmond, Virginia.
Is this just like education, like I go for classes, or is there more to this?
We try to keep it as informative and engaging as possible. There are a couple of days of pre-conference classes. So if you're kind of new to the field, you can get in, kind of the weekend and the Monday before and kind of build your foundational knowledge. And so, if you do that, you can get the most out of the rest of the conference, which is, focused on, topics that range from, beginning to intermediate to advanced, and all sorts of different topics, like just, not only protocol analysis itself and using Wireshark, but decrypting SSL and Quick and things like that, and developing Wireshark and just all, whatever different topics people happen to talk about at this particular conference.
There was an article we had on Packet Pushers for a while that was really popular, dealing with decrypting in doing packet decryption for purposes of packet analysis. So yeah, I imagine topics like that would do really well. So was there like a keynote, that kind of a vibe?
Yeah, this year is one of our special years. We managed to get Vint Cerf to agree to give a keynote for us. And there's this phrase, "Don't meet your heroes." Vint is the exception to that phrase. You should absolutely meet this hero. The few times that I've been fortunate enough to interact with him, he's just been so informative and gracious, and just he's a great guy to be around. And if you're into networking at all, you realize that Vint has had an outsized impact on the history of networking and just human development in general. He's helped everybody to connect over the past however many years with the internet. And so this is a great chance to meet someone of that stature.
So, I've got some gray in my beard, so I'm familiar with Vint. But if for people who aren't, why I know his sort of nickname is the father of the internet. What earned him those accolades?
He was the one of the people who developed TCP, the
Oh,
foundational,
that.
packet switch networking. Back when he was doing his original research, the big question was, okay, do we do circuit switched or packet switched? And telephone companies and telephone networks were based around circuit switching and just making this direct connection between two endpoints. And he came up with the notion that, well, if we break everything up into little chunks, it works a lot better, and you can fit a lot more stuff on the wire, and do things a lot more effectively. And that's where modern networking kind of started.
Yeah, for
So
sure. Without TCP, that's we'd be in a different place.
Yeah.
It is a great opportunity then to meet somebody who was sort of there at the beginning.
So the event feels like more like a traditional conference then. So Sharkfest is like we're going to have some keynote talks, we're going to have some workshops, are we going to have like different tracks I can pick?
Yeah, we have two main tracks this time around. Sometimes we have two, sometimes we have three, but the tracks I don't think this year are kind of split into overall topics. It's too bad Sherry, our conference organizer, couldn't be here because she's much more involved with this on a day-to-day level. But no, we do have a wide variety of talks to choose from, which is the main point I'm trying to get to here. Whatever you're trying to focus on in your work, you can get something out of this conference.
Do I need to be a Wireshark expert to show up at this event and get something out of it?
Absolutely not, and maybe it's better if you aren't. um, I say that because the title is Sharkfest, the Wireshark Developer and User Conference, and it was the person who originally organized this, Janice Pampanato. She was a business development manager back at a company I used to work for, and she kind of pointed out that, hey, you have this community, you need to bring everybody together. And the original thought was, well, let's bring the development team together and they can kind of develop Wireshark more effectively. But we realized that we want to bring in other people too, and that's what we did. And she made it very inviting, very familial, and we have tried to maintain that tone over the years and just make it this inviting place where people can come and learn. And when I talk about when I mentioned earlier, maybe it's a good thing if you don't know about Wireshark and you come, it's because that's valuable to the development team. If you are not an expert in the tool and maybe you have a stumbling block, we need to see that in front of us, and that we can make the tool better and easier to use and extend its power that way.
Easier to use, I think that's a key for any software developer. I don't mean Wireshark specifically necessarily. I've been using it for a long time and find it pretty intuitive. But when you build something, you don't see what someone who's never seen it before might be experiencing, and you need that insight.
Oh, you absolutely do. There have been several times that I've been at Sharkfest and looked over at somebody, trying to use Wireshark and see them struggling with something. I'm thinking, we can fix that pretty easily. We should do that. And it has in a couple of cases helped us to kind of shape the interface and then refine it so that it is the workflow is a bit more smooth.
So are there actually opportunities for people who use Wireshark to get in touch with or interact with the actual developers?
Yes, we have a room set aside called the Developer Den where the developers typically hang out, and we invite people to stop by and talk to the developer. It's actually a great thing to see.
That's pretty cool. I don't know how often you would get a chance like that to actually talk to somebody building the software.
So Vint Cerf's going to be there. He's giving the keynote. Tell us about other workshops or presentations that stand out to you, Gerald.
Well, okay, there's a session in particular that is really cool. We have it each year called the Packet Doctors, and it's special in that we don't record it. What happens is we have some expert protocol analysts up on the stage, and we dress them up as doctors because they are the packet doctors. And people bring in packet captures, with maybe they have solved the problem, maybe they haven't solved the problem, but they bring in interesting packet captures, and the packet doctors pull up these packet captures and talk their way through analyzing this capture. So you get an insight into their methodologies and workflows and things like that. And it's really enlightening, and it's always entertaining, and it's a great way to see how experts use this in action.
And you, through watching them work through this problem, might get some insights on how for ways you could approach a protocol analysis or a packet capture.
Yeah.
Cool. Are there any kinds of competitions? Are there things to do in the evenings? What else goes on there?
We try to keep the audience engaged and excited about protocol analysis. I mean, we try to give as much bang for the buck as you can. I mean, the people are coming here and spending their time here and paying us to be here, and so we want to make it worthwhile. But in the evening, we have like a treasure hunt, which gets people involved with our sponsors. But another thing we do is on one night we'll have some sort of competition. I think in Europe last time we had a quiz show with buzzers and buttons and stuff. This time it looks like we're going to have an escape group challenge, and those are always fun and exciting. One of the years, the Wireshark core developers were on an escape group team, and everybody assumed that we were going to win. And what actually happened was all the developers as a general rule, we'll use the latest, greatest version of Wireshark out of our source code repository. And at that point, we had a bug in Wireshark that prevented us from doing this challenge, and we lost. So that was entertaining
Where's
too.
Gerald?
Yeah,
I haven't seen him in a week. I think he's still stuck in the escape room.
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Uh,
So actually, yeah, if you want to see a stumble and failed and just get that sort of Schadenfreude show up here as well, that's
Mhm.
maybe an attraction.
So, in your mind, then, who is an ideal attendee? Who should think about prioritizing this event, given travel restrictions, budget restrictions, and so on?
If your job involves keeping a network fast, reliable, or secure, you should show up. It's kind of that simple. This is an opportunity if you are large, whether you're just this lone person taking care of a network, and there are a lot of people out there that are like this,
Mhm.
or you're on a small team or even a large team. This is a great opportunity to come and mingle with people who have the same responsibilities and worries and concerns that you do, and learn how to more effectively manage and secure your network.
So, this is the U.S. event. You mentioned Europe? Do you also do one in Europe?
Yeah, typically we have events both in the US and Europe. In the US, we'll have it in late spring, early summer, like around May or June. And in the fall, we'll have an event in Europe. This year's event in Europe is in Warsaw, and that's going to be really cool. I haven't been there before, so I'm excited about that.
And my understanding is for this U.S. event in June, the call for papers is closed. What about November if I've got a hankering to present?
If you want to present, yeah, just submit a paper, and we do have a CFP open for Sharkfest Europe.
One other thing that I wanted to bring up is that the Wireshark Foundation just released a new tool called StrataShark, and essentially that, just as Wireshark is for packets, StrataShark is for system calls. So you can diagnose and troubleshoot application performance and security issues on like Windows and Linux machines. Is there going to be anything about StrataShark at Sharkfest?
Yeah, I will talk about it briefly in my sort of introductory talk, but we do have a couple of sessions I know about StrataShark. And as you said, StrataShark is a sibling application to Wireshark that lets you analyze system calls and log messages. And so it's what I do in my day job right now, and it's kind of what I'm excited about. But as I said, we're gonna have at least a couple of sessions about it. And if you want to learn more about it, I will be there, the other Wireshark developers will be there, and we'll be happy to answer any questions about it.
And just for folks who might be curious about StrataShark, Jennifer Manila and I did a podcast episode on Packet Protector with you, Gerald, about StrataShark. We'll get into a little more detail if folks want to check that out.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. So where should listeners go to get more details if they're interested in Sharkfest and want to check it out?
You can go to sharkfest.wireshark.org, and we all have banners on the regular Wireshark website as well, and you can look at the agenda and sign up, and if you have any questions, I believe there's a contact email as well on the website.
Well, Gerald, thanks for being here. Thanks for letting us know about Sharkfest coming up this June. Go to sharkfest.wireshark.org if you're interested. Check it out. Gerald, are you online? If folks want to reach out to you that way, or is there any place they can find you?
Sure, I'm on Mastodon. I'm on Blue Sky. Wireshark has a Discord server you can reach me on, and my email address is in Wireshark's about box. So that was maybe a dumb thing to do, but it's there. So
Right. Well, thank you, Gerald, for joining us again, and thanks to you, the listener. You can find this and many more fine, free technical podcasts, along with our community blog and our community Slack channel at packetpushers.net. You can follow me on Blue Sky. You can follow the rest of us on LinkedIn. You can hear us on Spotify. And if you would leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.